So, after 5 years happily bimbling around in ACC, you've decided it's time for a change. And you thought, you know what, I'm going to give Le Mans Ultimate a go. But as we all know, change can be scary. Everything just looks that little bit different, feels that little bit different. But fear not, my friends, because in this video, I am going to attempt to take you through everything that you need to know to get you over that initial LMU hump and get you right up to speed. Just as a quick side note before we get going, now is the perfect time to be buying LMU. It's currently 13% off on Steam for the base game and 20% off all of the DLC as well. So get it while it's good. The price is going to go up as soon as it goes to full release on the 22nd of July. The first thing to note is that the cars themselves are different. And I don't just mean that there's LMP2s and hypercars in this game. The GT3s themselves are set up differently. There is a different rule spec between the GT World Challenge and WEC. WEC cars are set up as endurance cars to go longer, basically. They're not the sprint races that you have in the GT World Challenge. So the most noticeable difference is that in LMU, the top speed of the GT3 cars is slightly balked. They're about 10 miles per hour or so slower than you'll be used to in ACC. So if you feel like you're slightly slower in LMU, well, yeah, you are. Now, before we jump into anything more complicated like settings, let's take a look at the differences in the HUD. I mean, most of this is fairly self-explanatory, but there are one or two things that are quite confusing when you first get into the game. The first thing to look at then is in the top left-hand corner. Well, I mean, this is fairly standard, most of it anyway. It's just the standings order and the time differences, that sort of thing. You've also got the M there, indicates what type of tyre that you're on and what your competitors are on as well. The percentage next to it, however, is the interesting bit. That is not the percentage of tyre wear as some people think it is. That's actually your virtual energy level, and we'll go into that in a second. You can also see this here down in the bottom right. You basically have two fuel bars, two energy level bars, one for actual physical fuel and one for virtual energy. And it's that bottom blue bar, the energy bar, that is being reflected up in the top left in the standings there. That's how much virtual energy you and your rivals have in the race. But what is virtual energy anyway? What does it even mean? Put simply, it is just the total energy output of the vehicle. Some vehicles use slightly more electrical energy than others do. It's usually between 5-10% of the car's total output of energy comes from some sort of electrical motor. Some it's higher, some it's lower. Some with the new Valkyrie, it's completely petrol driven. Here I am in the pits then in my Ferrari, and as you can see, the maximum I can put in this fuel tank is 120 litres of fuel, and I have 100% virtual energy, which according to this is estimating I'm going to get about 12 laps in with my 100% full virtual energy tank. But if we go to the garage, if you look to the bottom right there, those two energy bars, those two fuel bars if you like, you'll see that 120 litres is going to get me 17 laps. So on fuel, I could drive this car for 17 laps around Bahrain right now. However, my virtual energy is going to run out after 12 laps. Now, my car's not going to stop. It's still going to have fuel in it. It's going to have 5 laps extra fuel. But if you run out of virtual energy in Le Mans Ultimate and in WEC, you get a fairly hefty penalty. It's around about 100 seconds, I think, 100 seconds stop-go penalty. So there is no point having 120 litres of fuel in my tank. Hence then we have this fuel ratio. Now if I set this to 1, we've got 100% virtual energy and 100 litres of fuel. So our fuel ratio is 1-to-1 with our virtual energy basically. Now if I go back to the garage, there again, you'll see that our fuel levels changed to 100 litres, but we've still actually got 2 laps more fuel than we really need. It's going to go 14 laps, and we're going to run out of virtual energy and get a penalty if we don't pit by 12 laps. Now, what you can do is run some laps, and in the MFD, there is a calculator for how much fuel per lap you're using and how much virtual energy you're using, and you can get a calculator together and get a really accurate read for exactly what your fuel ratio needs to be. But I find, to be honest, if you just play around with this in the garage, and this varies from track to track, but I've found with the Ferrari around about 88, 89% fuel ratio, something like that is about right. So go back to the pits, and there you go. 89 litres of fuel is going to get me 12.7 laps, and I've got about 12.2 laps of virtual energy. So I could probably lower that fuel ratio even more if I wanted to. The basic idea is you want your fuel laps and your virtual energy laps to match up. You obviously don't want to run out of fuel because then you'll stop on track, but you also don't want to run out of virtual energy first because then you get a hefty penalty. Next, let's talk about tyres, shall we? Now, the major difference between the tyres in LMU and those in ACC is that there isn't really any meta for PSI in the LMU like there is in ACC. There's no range that you've got to get them into to even be able to be competitive on a lap. As you can see here, by default, they're actually set to the lowest possible pressure, and that's pretty much where you keep them. The range that you want to concern yourself with in LMU really is the temperature range, and you can see that here. The optimal temperature for these medium tyres is 92 degrees C. Now, the temperature does depend quite heavily, obviously, on the conditions on track. So you're not always going to be able to get the tyres within that range. But, you know, it's still a good to have to hold that temperature range in your head as you go around the track. Your tyres are obviously going to be cold when you come out of the pits, and they may overheat at certain times as well. So it's good to know whether you can, or whether you want to push on the tyres, or whether maybe you need to hold back. Right now I've just come out the pits, so if we go at the bottom left of the screen here in our MFD and just cycle across this little, oh, crashing here, the little tyre icon, that's giving you all the information on your tyres right now, including the wear, and the temperatures there are the ones in blocks in the middle there. So my front left is currently 78.6, front right 77, and so on and so on. And obviously those temperatures are going to keep rising as I drive around what is quite a warm Bahrain track. So that's the tyre basics. That's what you need to keep your eye on in LMU. Don't worry about the PSI, worry about the temperatures. Another major difference in the GT3s in LMU is in the electronic assists, the TC and the ABS. Unlike ACC, where there's basically one setting for traction control, in LMU there's three. And if I just, in my MDF again, MFD, in my MFD here at the on the bottom left, if I just go over to the little electrical icon there, you'll see there's three settings. One for the overall traction control, one for the power cut, and another one that controls slip. Now, as a beginner, I wouldn't worry about these too much. All I would say is the stock settings for most cars are pretty decent. 777 is the stock for the Ferrari, and I'm finding it fine. If you're feeling adventurous, you could maybe lower them down a couple of clicks. One thing I would say though, don't just do what you do in ACC and put it on one. Probably not going to help you very much. You do need to run a decent level of TC in this game. If you put all of them on one, you're not going to have a very fun experience out the box, and you're going to find yourself spinning off a lot. My advice is, don't worry about it too much. Just don't put it on one. Keep the stock settings. Maybe go 555 if you're feeling adventurous. Now, for ABS, it's a slightly different story, and for this, I'm going to have to come out of the game and show you a little chart. So yeah, ABS is a little bit more complicated, and this is the chart that I need to show you, because in LMU, there are 9 different settings that go 1 to 9, and it's not just that 1 is the least and 9 is the most, like it is in most, well, certainly like it is in ACC anyway. As you can see from this chart, and as is represented within the game as well, you will see that they're kind of, it's grouped into blocks, 1 to 3, 4 to 6, and 7 to 9. I won't go into this too much, you can review this chart at your leisure, but the basics are that settings 1 to 3 are a more oversteery setup, 4 to 5 are kind of balanced, and 7 to 9 give you kind of a more understeery setup. So if we're talking about how aggressive the ABS is, how quickly it activates, then settings 1, 4, and 7 are the least aggressive of the ABS settings. So my advice on this is a bit like the TC actually. If you're a beginner to the game, just leave it as stock. Most of them are either set on 9 or one of 5 or 6. 5 or 6 obviously give you a bit more of a balanced car, so you can maybe start with 5 or 6. What I wouldn't do is obviously turn it off, but I wouldn't start on something like 1 or 2, because again, I just think you're going to find it difficult. You might be spinning a bit more, and it's, at least at the beginning, it's going to spoil your enjoyment of the game. It's also worth noting that I've been reliably informed that none of these settings have a great deal of bearing on braking distances. They're all more or less the same. It's more of a braking feel thing that's affected by these, not the distance. Another pretty big difference in LMU compared to something like ACC is the pit stops. Now, the first thing to mention about these is when it comes to the tyre changes. As you can see here from my MFD in the bottom left, you can change the entire set, or you can change individual tyres. You can even change, as are the rules in the work, individual tyres. And you can see here, I've got a wet on my front left tyre, and the rest I'm going to request new medium tyres. You can put completely different compounds or individual compounds on different tyres. So for instance, and this is particularly true with hypercars where you've got a different range of compounds other than medium and wet, you've also got softs and hards. You could have softs on the front, hards on the rear. You can have softs on the left hand side, mediums on the right hand side. You can have a mucky mixture all over the place, all depending on how they wear and how the temperatures are affected. So you don't have to stick with just one compound, and you can change individual tires. It's quicker to change an individual tire than a whole set at a pit stop if you want. If you particularly worn out your front left, you just change your front left. We're not going to do that though. We're just going to stick a set of new mediums on. Pit entry is very much the same. Get it broken down to 60 kph. It's in the boxing bit that it becomes different. You don't need to be too accurate about it. As long as you park more or less within that red box there, you're fine. I know the car gets picked up and moved, but the time does not change. You'll also see there's a timer going on here. Now, these are aggregate times. It's not saying 12, it's 12 seconds to change the tires. It's not 20 seconds on top of that for fuel. That's an aggregate time. So it's 12 seconds for tires, 8 seconds for the fuel to make up a 20-second pit stop. As you can see, it was actually 19.7. And away we go. The other thing to mention, and I can't really demonstrate this, unfortunately, is that there's no ghosting in the pits. If there's a car in front of you in the pits and you try to pull into your pit box, you will just whack it up the backside and cause yourself damage. As far as I know, it doesn't do any damage to the car that's actually in the pit box ahead of you, but you will do damage to yourself if you crash into somebody in the pits. Another thing to mention here is around damage. I've basically purposely driven into a wall here. So let me pull into my pit box. Again, don't need to be too accurate about it. Again, you're going to get that timer up there. So just to go through these aggregate times again, we've got 12 seconds for the tire change. It's going to be another, so 97 seconds. So the 97 seconds once the damage is repaired, and then we're going to get another, what, 17 seconds on top of that for fuel to make 114 seconds. Now, as you can see, what's just flipped up there, we can backspace and cancel the damage repair if we want to. So if you come into the pit, one thing it doesn't do is tell you the approximate amount of damage or time that it's going to take to repair the damage like it does in ACC. But if you come in, you've got some damage, you think, well, I'm just going to get that repaired, and it turns out it's going to take a minute longer than you thought it was going to, you can cancel that within the pit box. The final thing to mention, as you may have noticed as well, is you don't have to turn your engine on and off. So in a sense, pitting in LMU is much easier than ACC. You don't have to be too accurate in the pit box. It doesn't lose you any time. You don't have to switch your engine off and back on again. So it's a much easier experience, actually. Okay, next then, race starts. And the first thing to mention is that you can go back and forth between the pits and the starting grid. So there you go. I'm on the grid now. This is a 30-minute race, so I'm going to need what? It's round Spa, so about 15, 16 laps. But as you can see, I've got about 20 laps worth of virtual energy there. It's actually telling me it's going to be 14 laps in the top right-hand corner there. That's always very handy. Just go to the starting grid, have a look on the top right-hand corner. How many laps should I say, it's estimating that you're going to be doing in the race. You can then just press escape, return to the garage, and then adjust your fuel as well as your tires accordingly, because I don't know whether this is just a bug right now, but right now it doesn't change you automatically onto new tires. You have to do that yourself, so do that in the garage before you start, and then we can go at the starting grid again like that. We've got about 15 seconds to go, and we've now got more or less the right amount of virtual energy and fuel. The next thing to mention about race start, and I won't demonstrate this here, but again, there is no ghosting on LMU. You can crash while you're on the formation lap or as you're rolling up towards the grid, so don't be trying to ghost through the cars or you will crash and you will get damage. So the first thing you'll notice here then is these lines on the grid. This is quite similar to ACC. You want to get yourself lined up obviously in the green area, and it is important to be in the right slot on your grid or you will get a penalty. Now I find the best way to do this is just to flick the pit limiter on and off. You do start at 60 kph or about 37-38 miles an hour. As you will see there, it comes up, so we have to hold our speed. Now the way to do that is to keep the pit limiter on, which I'm not doing, and then as it goes green you flick the pit limiter off and away you go. I also just want to mention the hypercars. Now if you're a beginner to LMU, you're probably not going to jump straight into hypercars, but for those of you who are brave enough to, there are a couple of things just to be aware of. One is, of course, this hybrid system that they have, this electronic engine that works in tune with the petrol engine to drive the car. And another is the way the brakes work and a feature called brake migration that they have. Now, starting with the hybrid engine, the important setting on this one, if we go into powertrain here, is the electric motor map setting. You see it's currently set to 40 kilowatts there. It can go up to 50 kilowatts in this particular car. There are differences between some of the hypercars. This is the BMW that we're talking about right now, and you can switch it right down to off. Now this setting basically tells the car how much of its energy at any one time it wants to draw from the electrical motor. So obviously if you have it off altogether, it's not drawing anything, it's using purely its petrol engine. And if you have it on 50 kilowatts, that's the max that it's ever going to draw. It's using both together to power the car. Now, the effect of this setting can be seen in your speedometer rev counter thing in the hub. It's this blue line on the right-hand side. And basically, as you accelerate, it will eat up that blue line. And as you brake, it fills it back up again. Now, I don't want to get too technical with this or anything, but the basic premise is just that you want to keep that blue line neither completely full or completely empty. If it's completely full, the car will stop charging the battery under braking, and that causes issue with the braking system. It messes around with the balance and stuff, and you will find that the car locks up far more easily. So you do not want to have this bar completely full, nor do you want to have it completely empty, because once it's empty, the car has to use 100% of its energy from the fuel, and you'll basically start using too much fuel, and you may end up running out of fuel before you run out of virtual energy. So don't sweat this too much. Just keep that bar somewhere around the middle. Map a button like I have on your steering wheel, where you can control how much electrical energy the car is going to use, and you can basically just adjust this as the race goes on. As it starts to get a little bit too low, you can turn it down to say 10 or 20 kilowatts to charge that bar back up again, and as it gets too high, you can put it on one of the higher settings. And again, this varies from track to track, so just do a few experiments. It's not really that difficult though. The bar takes quite a while to drain, and it takes quite a while to sort of top itself back up again under braking as well. Again, like it's kind of track dependent, but you just need to keep an eye on it. Brake migration is the other one that's particularly important, I think, at least if you're a beginner. It can be found in wheels and brakes, and it's underneath brake bias here. Now, that's because it's kind of linked to the brake bias. What brake migration does is, as you brake, it moves the brake bias forward automatically from the rear to the front of the car by the percentage that you specify here. You can go up to at least to about 2.5%. So as we come into a particularly heavy braking zone, we don't want the rears to lock and spin the car around. You might, when you first start with the hypercars, you will find that rear locking is a bit of an issue. So putting that brake migration, I would say, on at least 2 to start with is a good idea. But certain tracks, like I said, 2.5 is absolutely fine as well. The absolute max that you can get it. It just makes braking into those heavy braking zones in a hypercar that little bit easier, and you won't find those kind of rear lockups and sort of 360 spins happening. Finally then, just a couple of little bonus settings that are kind of hidden away actually within the game settings that are quite useful actually, that I've only very recently found out about. So to do this, we have to go into this little cog up here. You can do this from the main menu as well. You don't have to be in the pits or anything. And it's in controls and calibrate. And under wheel settings here, so these first 2 settings here, prevent downshift to neutral if neutral configured. Basically, you should have neutral configured, but it basically, yeah, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It prevents you when you're shifting down on your steering wheel. It prevents you from accidentally shifting into neutral, which can cause problems, you know, issues unsettling the car and whatnot into braking zones. Suddenly the engine kind of the engine braking dies and you overshoot the corner. The next one is linked to this as well. It's use simultaneous shift up and down neutral activation. And basically what this does, because you can't shift down to neutral, if you pull both shifters together, it will engage neutral for you. And what that's useful for is if you do spin at high speed and say you're in 5th gear, you don't then have to really quickly get down the gears to get to neutral. You just pull both shifters together and the car automatically shifts into neutral. So those are my tips for those who are new to LMU, particularly if you're coming over from ACC. If you found that useful, please consider liking and subscribing. Leave me a comment if you think I've missed anything out, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.